Welcome to another episode of the PLM Global Green Alliance, talking with PLM related vendors about their sustainability offerings and solutions. Today I'm joined by Klaus Brettschneider, my green partner in crime from the Green Alliance, and we have as a guest Henrik Hulgaard from Configit. First of all, welcome, Henrik. We spoke some times ago about configuration lifecycle management, but now we're going to talk about sustainability. So please introduce yourself and let us know what is your relation to sustainability.
Thank you so much, Josh. Yes, I'm Henrik Hulgaard. I'm the product manager in Configit. I'm head of our product management group. So what we do is basically we talk to our customers to understand what their problems are so that we can hopefully address them by building some software. So the type of customers that we work with are manufacturing companies, rather large, rather complex products. Typical examples could be car manufacturers, tractors and passenger cars, but we also work with manufacturing companies that do rather complex machinery, ASML, for example, in Netherlands doing chip manufacturing machines, ABB doing electrical components and things like that. So those are sort of the customers that we help when they struggle with the configurable products. So the types of products that these companies have are configurable. They have to be configured in order to be manufactured and delivered to a customer.
Okay. You were jumping already immediately in the company and the capabilities, and I was first curious, and you're coming from the Scandinavia side, so what is your connection personally to sustainability?
So personally, I would say I think that's an agenda that has been a lot of focus on certainly the last years. Of course, we've been concerned about the environment for several decades now. I think it's now is very clear to everybody that this is a real problem, certainly in Europe, and we also see that in terms of the regulatory and legislative work that is being rolled out. There's a lot of stuff going on. I think I'm no different than most people, that I'm also concerned, and I'm concerned on the behalf of my children. We can all see how much change that has happened in our daily environments just over the last few years. Suddenly there are floods and fires and all kinds of natural disasters in our daily lives.
And in your company, do you see also a change in business purpose or mission statements over the years coming up?
I would say it. I mean, of course, companies produce nice reports. Some are certainly more active than others. I would say the companies that we work with, as a broad comment, I would say they seem to be moving when there are regulatory constraints that push them, but maybe not before that. There is, of course, another push, and that is an important one, and that is that there starts to be some focus also on from the sort of investor side, that there are certain stocks are classified as being more green than others, and there's some funds that only invest in green companies. So I think that there starts to be sort of a push, both from, you could say, from the customer side, but also from the investor side. So that is also pushing companies to do something, I would say.
Yeah, the ESG reporting
Yes.
is quite famous for that. And as you mentioned, yeah, everyone wants regulations to have a fair playing field, because otherwise, if you don't have to obey to the regulations, you can still go your own way.
Yeah, and it's, I think the regulation has has the nice effect, and certainly when it's not a single country like little Denmark, it wouldn't mean much. But when it's EU that rolls out some legislation, then it affects, of course, companies within the EU, but it actually affects all companies in the world who wants to sell to the EU. So it affects the American companies quite well. So they also have to think about digital product passport, for example.
So coming to your solutions, you talk about configuration of products. Is it pure mechanical products, or can it also be configuration of businesses?
Oh, it can. Yeah, so when you say mechanical products, very few products are mechanical these days only, right? There's always a software aspect to it. So if we start with that, then even within that space, one of the areas where you can use a configurator is not just to expose what can you choose when you buy the product, but as part of that process where you express your needs, that will also help you know how to configure the software that goes into the product. And when we talk about sustainability, for example, if you think of a rather simple product like a circulation pump that we all have in our houses that circulates the water, it's actually software parameterized these days. If you buy a modern pump, there are quite a few software parameters that you need to set. And if you don't set them correctly, it won't operate optimal, and you will basically lose energy. It will not be as energy efficient as it could be. Yeah, so getting that coupling from I have these needs, therefore I need that product. By the way, that product needs to have the software set in this way so that it operates optimally for you.
And what part does Configit play in this tuning? Is it based on static parameters, or can you also do actual or real-time tuning configuration of products?
It normally won't be real time, but we as part of the configuration models that we define that defines how you can select you could say the physical features of the product. You also define these software parameters. So when you have configured a product, you know it. I mean, if it was a car, you know the color and the engine and the type of seats, but you also know all the values for all the software parameters that goes into that particular car. So all of that gets defined in a single model and gets sort of calculated as you are reconfiguring the car. But then, of course, what you're pointing at is that there's also an ongoing optimization of those parameters that you may want to do. And then we are more talking about then you need to be more, over the air, online, and you can collect data and use that to optimize. And I don't recall we have many cases of doing that. One of our customers is Vestas, and they do use our software for configuring their wind turbines. But the monitoring is, I think, all on them. So,
is this optimization of products to optimize energy consumption, to put the right parts into it, the focus in regards to sustainability for Configit, or do you see something else?
Well, I think we are. I mean, we built, you could say, a configuration engine that can help a user or an AI bot for that matter, but to find a valid combination of parameters. And we can help you in optimizing in that space. And depending on how you put these models together, you can optimize by price or by, say, CO2 emissions or by what else. So a configurator is quite a useful tool to be able to do that types of trade-off, which it normally is, that you trade off between, say, performance and price and how sustainable it is. Now, one of the challenges when we talk sustainability is that it's not just about the emissions that gets produced when you actually manufacture the product. it's also what goes on in the whole lifetime of that product. And if you take any mechanical product, it will live for many years. If it's a car, it might live for 10 or 20 years. Many of the manufacturers that we work with, their products live for even longer. And so that means that you need to have some understanding of the usage of that product when you are configuring it and buying it upfront, because that might affect your decisions.
Yeah, in our PLM world, we talk about the virtual twin, and I would say then with Configit, you are focusing on the virtual design twin, not on the virtual operation twin. So, and then my next step, of course, is curious. How does this virtual twin get its data? What are the data sources that usually companies use?
And that's an excellent question, because I think that's where a lot of manufacturing companies really struggle. I think they even struggle with the basically rolling up of the parts that goes into a product, knowing, because they of course have sub-suppliers and so on. But even more so when it comes to how is this product being used. If I buy a pump and it sits there in my house and I have a certain pattern of usage, what is actually the energy consumption that it has over its lifetime, that feeding that into a model that also is being in action when you configure the product upfront. I think very few of our customers actually have that data and have those models in a way that at least they can incorporate them.
Because one topic that I'm always saying, in order to get sustainability implemented in your design phase, you need to become digital and you need to be data driven. And if you look at your customers, how much of their processes are data driven? Are they aware of the need?
Well, I mean, that's why they work with us, you could say, is to become data driven, or having much more electronically aligned processes all the way from engineering to the sales processes, so that there's an alignment there, and then further down to manufacturing, and eventually in the whole service area, where you over the years have to service and upgrade and eventually decommission the product, and knowing how your product is being configured, and initially you talk about all the possible configurations. Later it's individual configurations that you manage. That's what we do. So I would say they are not, I mean, they're working on becoming more digital. But digital is not just that you have stuff on a computer. It's also that the data you work with is aligned, and that you can use it across the different functions. That you don't have one system in the engineering space, say PLM, and there you have some of the data, and then you have another system in the manufacturing or in the supply chain space, and if they don't talk the same language, then it becomes really difficult to consolidate the data.
Exactly. We need what I write in my blogs about the connected enterprise.
Yeah. But it's really hard, and because it is data, and that means that you need to have some alignment across the different functions. That's not the typical way these companies work.
It's even more difficult if you have to scale it then up, right? For all the products. So we get the life cycle assessment information, so carbon, water consumption, and these kind of things. So if you do not have your data model under control, you have no chance basically to get these kind of information, even for one product, not mentioned for the components or subcomponents.
And we are, I mean, certainly when we talk about the larger manufacturing companies, they have many different subsidiaries and may have acquired different companies over time, and they may even still have separate systems that produces different groups of products. So it is an undertaking to establish this alignment across the organization, and that's what our software helps them do. We help them establish what we call a feature language, which are basically the codes you use to define the different variants that you may produce. And even that can be a big challenge for these companies, that they don't have a standardized code set. So I recall working with ABB, and it turned out that ABB doing electrical components, you would imagine that they had a standard coding for electricity or for voltage, but that was not the case. So when you took a model from one subcomponent and want to combine it into a system, then you basically have to recode or define that mapping.
It's a topic on its own, coding of of parts in a digital enterprise. By the way, another topic would come close to my mind of configuration management, and you mentioned Vestas. I was there a year ago for a modularity conference, and of course modularity is also a way to address sustainability, because in this way you can have upgradable products.
Several products,
Is that a topic where you're focusing on too, where you're bringing value on the modularity infrastructure?
Absolutely. I mean, this is, you could say, our home turf, because when you start modularizing your product, then the very natural next question is what components or modules fits together to form a working solution. And that's basically what you define in our software. So in a sense, that's what we always have been doing. I think the difference might be that we work with companies that already are fairly mature when it comes to modularity. So they already have broken it down into a number of sub-elements, and we help them then building up these rule sets. But I think a lot of companies will need to go through that exercise of breaking their products down so that they better can reuse parts of them or allow a longer life cycle of the product, because you can replace, say, the battery of your phone and don't have to buy a whole new phone.
Yeah, I think modularity starts with methodology and business before you come to the technical solution.
Yes.
And if you look to your customers, where do you see them using configuration or lifecycle management or Configit in the context of sustainability, or are we still in a very early phase?
I think we're still in a fairly early phase. I think actually where strongest sort of need these days is really when it comes to the regulatory compliance. I think manufacturing companies can see that there is an increasing pressure on or more regulations are coming, basically, and this has traditionally been a very manual process. So you talked about digital transformation, but this is also something that typically has been managed very manually. There being RA people that's what they do. They monitor the regulatory changes through all the different regions of the world that you need to put your products into. And that's where configuration solution can help, because these ends up being rules in our system. And for a car, this is nothing new. It's called homologation rules. You define all the regulatory constraints that a car needs to live up to, whether it drives in Europe or US or Asia. But now this is coming to pretty much any product out there.
That was actually the area where I thought a configuration system could be very helpful for in the sustainability context, because you should actually know every component, right? You know your features. If you can figure out at the end what environmental impact these features and these functions have, then you could actually be able to configure your carbon footprint or your water consumption. Is this a fair understanding?
It is, and you might know from certainly I don't know if it's worldwide, but in Europe we had this ABCD scale on products. If you buy a TV or a refrigerator, you can sort of, by looking at just that, you can tell how energy efficient it is. And there's nothing that says you couldn't do that for any product out there, or any configuration of a product. And then you could, as a consumer or a buyer, you could start by saying, let's look at from B and upwards and see what's the price level there and what's the options I can get. And I think this is really where configurators should be able to help, because it's very complicated and most people cannot figure it out by themselves. I mean, if you go to a car configurator today, you would probably be told how many grams of CO2 per kilometer it produces. I don't think most people would know what really is good or bad in that range.
Yeah.
And it's something that's shown with very small print at the very end, right? So, but for example, for electrical cars, the size of the wheels that you choose, just, the rim size of nice sporty wheels versus not so big, has a dramatic influence on the range of the car. It's like a 10% reduction in range for every inch you go up or something. So whether you have 18, 19 or 20 inch wheels has a rather big influence on how energy efficient your car is.
And the best is the big ones?
Sorry?
And the best one are the big ones, or?
Well, people probably think they look nice, but they are not the most energy efficient. They're the worst.
That's interesting, because you would say we all choose for the best solution.
Yeah, and this is an example where actually the big wheels are probably also the most expensive ones. So you pay extra to get a worse range on your car.
I had recently an interesting discussion with Dave Duncan from PTC. He's the VP Sustainability there, and he mentioned that companies, manufacturers should focus on their products' sustainability impact, not only on the parts, because the parts are a small detail. It's about the total product, the product in use. Is this the same also with Configit? Are you configuring on the product or on the module level, or do you go to the part level even?
No, we normally don't go to the part level, but I think his point is quite valid, that it is the usage of the whole product over its life that's important. And I think this discussion has been come up also with the traditional petrol cars versus electrical cars, because an electrical car has a higher footprint in the manufacturing. But if you look at the whole life cycle, then they're significantly better.
Because I've seen some examples of LCA tools where you could have from every individual part it's a carbon impact, and then just like a bomb roll up, you have the.
I think that is the approach that engineers take today. I think that, that as far as I understand, that's how sustainability is being addressed. That you look at the roll of the parts and you try to make trade-offs there. But I think what we urge our customers to do is to look at the actual impact overall. And this starts really with the product selection. Why did you choose a certain product versus another one? It might be that if you pay a little bit more money up front, you can actually save money in energy consumption over.
How much financial parameters do you have in your product configuration?
I mean, we have pricing, of course, and pricing can be cost as well. That's just another type of price calculation. So that's the normal sort of level, and the price calculation can, of course, be rather complicated. It's not just that you add the prices of the features. No. So we have a pricing engine that can do very flexible price calculations, but I don't know, was that what you mean by financial information? Because
yeah, because we have to stay at the design virtual twin, as I stated in the beginning, and not on the operational virtual twin, because then you would have all your operational financial information, which I think is not in scope.
Yeah, so the challenge, of course, is when you do engineering, you don't necessarily know anything about, I mean, in the early phases of engineering, you may not know the cost and pricing levels at the end. But this will be, I mean, this pricing is also taxing, for example. And one of the regulatory changes that are coming is about how you package your product. There's an EU law that's being rolled out that basically means that depending on how recyclable the packaging of your product is, the more or less you have to pay in tax. So that's a good example of how your decisions in how you actually package it affects the end price of the product that you may not be aware of. And suddenly you need to be managing this across all the different markets that you deal with, which can be, 50 or 100 different markets, each with their own taxing structures. So how do you optimize your product there? And that's another place where we see a configuration solution being applicable. That is that you can build those tax rules into the constraint engine, and then basically again navigating this space of all the different options that allows you to find the most optimal place.
It's a very interesting aspect. So we currently do projects with customers addressing the UK plastic tax and Spain plastic tax, right? Mm-hmm. And for them, you have to understand what your packaging is and what plastic is recycled, what is not recycled. And we take the product structures basically and the packaging components and then run it against the sales component, right? So that we know how much products we actually have imported to the UK, and then we can calculate the tax. With a configurator, you could even be more flexible on the packaging side because you have flexible ways to put your packaging together in the configurator, and then you could actually predict what kind of taxes you will have to pay or what kind of changes you have to do if you want to import this to the UK or to Spain. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and there are choices, and a configurator is all about choices. And we had a fun example with bananas and how you can package them. And there are many different ways people can choose to package up bananas being sold in your supermarket. Mm-hmm. And they each have come with different art or attributes on how well do they preserve the bananas and what's the cost in terms of taxing and also in terms of shipments and how you can if they're too soft, then they get mushed and you lose true waste, right? So
I noticed we are having a quite technical discussion on capabilities and of course regulations are pushing us in a certain directions. But what about the business benefits with or without Configit, Henrik, for example? Why would people build this additional layer? What is it? Saving costs, or is it saving errors, or both?
Yeah, so errors is cost, of course. Well, I mean, traditionally people engage with us to, as you said, digital transformation, making sure that what a company can sell is aligned with what they can manufacture, reducing errors in the quoting processes and errors in the manufacturing processes. But as we also just talked about, there's also a push to modularize products to decompose them into smaller reusable subcomponents, and then you also need a configurator to help you how you can combine these to make many different offerings to your customers. And then of course if you do not adhere to these regulatory constraints, then that's another big problem. But it is, I would say, fundamentally it's about aligning between engineering and sales. That's the big challenge, and optimizing the engineering so that you have as little variability in the engineering while keeping the options that your customers would like to have.
And would that require a quite mature company that has its processes in place to build this configuration layer? How dynamic can changes be handled?
I think anybody who have configurable products will need a configurator when they reach a certain complexity level, not necessarily maturity level. You can find very complex products out there that may not need a configurator because they do an engineer to order process. So you have engineers involved in the sales processes and basically hand calculate every order. But even those companies, and we're talking about airplanes, for example, Airbus and Boeing. I mean, even though they are traditionally engineered to order, they still would like to eliminate as much time and engineering effort in the quotation processes as possible. So they also are looking into making at least parts of the offering more configurable. But you're right that certainly the companies we work with are quite mature when it comes to understanding what a configurable product is. They have done so for many years, and we are moving down the market, I would say, and starting having offerings that are also addressing less mature and less complex manufacturers, and we have a SaaS solution now, a cloud-based solution. So that's a simpler way for our partners and our customers to get started. So that's the way we are trying to go down the market.
And is this SaaS solution, I would say, working as a plugin on existing PLM environments?
Plugin, I think, is stretching it, but we do have some standard integrations, both to Salesforce, SAP, and PTC Windchill. So those are some typical sort of connectors that we built.
Because that's what I would expect from a modern PLM infrastructure, that you have data-driven platforms connecting with each other where relevant. Yeah.
And again, the devil is in the data, because if you do not have alignment of the data, then you can have all the nice integrations built up, but if they don't align on the data, then it doesn't really matter.
And if you are a data geek, I think you can enjoy all the discussions on LinkedIn at the moment on all the ways to manage federated types of data sources. Henrik, anything next that is coming from Configit that we should be looking out for?
I think that the really big thing that's going on, and that's maybe not so related to sustainability, but that's AI. And we see AI as a key enabler in quite a number of different areas within our space. I think you can certainly imagine a chatbot, an AI-based chatbot, that instead of you having to select stuff in a drop-down, then you can chat with it and it will configure a product for you or find the right product for you. That's actually not where we find it most interesting for us. It's more interesting to look at how to get these configuration models established in the first place, based on documents and Excels and Word and all the other places where people have unstructured data. And we have some very exciting and very promising results from that.
Could also help on the sustainability side, right? When customers not complain, but have to figure out emission factors for their parts and their impact, AI could help basically to find the right data to do so, even if they didn't do the full calculation for themselves.
I think it has a lot of promise, just as a productivity tool to find the data and also to extract it out of material that might already exist, but where it's for a human is just impossible to go through 500-page document and find the relevant bits and pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I really can see the value that you see with AI. AI is not creating new things, and you don't want to create new things. You want to have consistent things all based on the information that exists.
Yeah, you have to be a little careful because AI it makes up stuff.
Exactly.
You cannot really trust what it comes up with. There's some fantastic dialogues you can find out there on the internet about strawberries and so you have to have some way to validate the data, and that's actually where we put most of our focus. We are not going to build an AI machine learning. That's something you get from Microsoft or others, but how you then validate what it puts into your computer and make sure that that's right. That's where we are really focusing.
Or at least communicate the quality of the data, right?
Or have a human in as a middle layer. There's an expert who says, that looks good and that looks good. But
we still think that humans can say that looks good.
They are still the experts for a little while.
Okay. I see we reaching more than half an hour, Henrik. Is there any point you want to say to our listeners?
well, if they're interested in learning a bit more about what we do, then of course our website is a place to start, configit.com, and I can. There's a white paper about sustainability transformation in manufacturing. So there's somebody who has written up some more details about what I've tried to convey here.
Okay, we will provide the links also in both in the recording and in the wrapping blog post. With that, thanks Henrik for the update and the insights of what Configit is doing at the moment. And I think, it's an interesting layer.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure, as always.
Okay.
Great.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay,
Take care,
thank
guys.
you. Bye-bye.